Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. I have fewer disclosures than Dr. Chapman, and we'll move on with the place that I live is Charleston, South Carolina. It's a very old city by U.S. standards, but I walk around Italy and I'm awed by the difference here. But this is our large medical center in South Carolina, and the problem or the benefit of living in the United States is it's a very big place. And when we have Alpha-1 patients distributed around the entire country trying to get research moving and through all of our very large medical centers becomes a big challenge. And this is the original reason that the United States built a registry infrastructure to bring all of the patients together. Our Alpha-1 registry you see here in the middle has been growing over the past 20 years, and I'll talk about our current 5,500 patients here in a minute. But part of the reason for the registry is we need to be able to continuously populate it, and word of mouth through the patient resources is one way that happens, but we actually have another way that brings people into our registry called the Alpha-Coded Test. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the 16,000 people that have tested for Alpha-1 through the internet to send the kits to patients' homes, and the results come back to the patients. And the majority of those individuals that are found to be deficient, we then invite into the registry and are therefore able to get both MM and MZ populations as control populations into our research studies, as well as the ZZ and SZ patients. The other thing about the United States these days is there's a large effort by our government to build very large registries. And if you notice here, the clinical data research networks are being built by the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. This is part of President Obama's initiative to build a very large group of individuals that can do comparative effectiveness research. Each of these different clinical data research networks have to enroll 1 million people, and each of those have subgroups of them as well. And there's, in addition, some patient-powered research networks, one of which was obtained by the COPD Foundation. And so as we start building and talking about registries, the United States always tends to do things in a big way. But we've been able to align ourselves with the COPD Foundation Patient-Powered Research Network. And this COPD Patient-Powered Network also has inserted an Alpha-1 Foundation arm into one of the CDRNs. And right now, our patients that enroll in the registry can also enroll in the COPD PPRN, and they can also enroll in one of the CDRNs. And so when one of these 8 million people gets diagnosed with Alpha-1, our challenge is to figure out how they come back, and so the whole United States can fuel back all the patients back into the Alpha-1 registry to be able to do all the research and all the benefits of having a patient population. So at the research, we are basically doing study-specific invitations. We have now invited for more than 80 studies that are populated. We've invited for 12 studies this year that have happened in the United States. We are building clinical trials capabilities, much the same way the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and other have done so. Our Alpha-Coded Testing study is an internet-based study in which consent is administered over the internet. Once consent is registered, we mail a testing kit to the patient's home or their family member's home. There's a little bit of finger stick fear when the blood spot ends up on the card, but it's sampled at the University of Florida in Gainesville, and results are returned to the individual. And what we've been able to show is that those individuals do inform their doctors. The doctors actually help and assist them to enroll into the registry. And our biggest challenge going forward, once they have a diagnosis, is to engage in the next set of research studies. What happens when we do family testing is that there are a lot more individuals that are severely deficient. And so of our Alpha-Coded Testing cohorts, 6% of individuals have a severe deficiency genotype, compared to testing in non-family members that has a 0.5 or 1%. And the kinds of studies that we do in this research style or study are looking at comorbidities and family functioning, depression, anxiety, and a lot of behavioral health. These individuals are enrolled for life, so that we now have 16,000 individuals that we can invite into research studies that would be populated not only by ZZs, but comparable individuals that had lung symptomatology and their genotypes returned with MZ or MM genotypes. What used to be the Alpha-1 Association Genetic Counseling Program was now integrated into the Alpha-1 Foundation with the amalgamation of the two United States patient groups last year. And so we hire a genetic counselor to be able to talk on the telephone across the United States to the patients that are in the registry. I also wanted to give a little bit of a piece about what's going to happen with our research studies of tomorrow. And this is a study of all the individuals that were enrolled in Dawn DeMayo and Ed Silverman's sibling pair studies. This was a brother and a sister, both with ZZ, who enrolled into the study. And if you notice on the axis here, this is age. This is an 80-year-old individual. And this is 100% predicted lung function. The blue are smokers, the reds are the non-smokers. But let's take this person, for example, a 68-year-old smoker who has 100% FEV1, has a little bit different phenotype than what we think might be out there in most of the Alpha-1 population. And if we only go and study the severely affected young individuals with COPD, we're going to come up with different answers. And so one of the burdens of our registries is that as we start enrolling more family members that might not have disease, we're going to have to carefully design our clinical trials to understand these different patient populations that will go into the clinical research trials, both for lung and liver, of tomorrow. So this is our registry. We continue to grow. We keep looking at the shape of this curve. Are we gaining or are we declining here? These are our discontinued members. Remember that if you enroll as a child and turn age 18, we have to get that college brain to now sign up for themselves. So we lose a lot of people at age 18 that choose not to enroll back in the registry. And unfortunately, we do have some deceased members over time. Our map of the United States, a very big place, has Alpha-1 populations that are not centered anywhere different than the mainstream of the U.S. population. So to think that there's a hot spot of Alpha-1 somewhere or wherever the Norwegians settled in the United States is not a true statement. There's movement in the United States everywhere. We do have a group of 82 clinical resource centers. These are other medical centers outside of Charleston that have interest in Alpha-1 and want to be able to put patients into the registry. One of our big challenges is how to empower those individuals to be able to put in data that's accurate and longitudinal, and to be able to give them the resources to be able to do that. And so our current iteration of our new registry format is actually to build a new model of the registry in which individual Alpha-1 patients will go to a clinical resource center, one of the 82. They will then enroll with informed consent, their CT scan images through a website portal. There are big movements in the registry field these days to use database tools such as REDCap that are now international. And once you get data into the database, there are also tools that will look at de-identified data and be able to, from the public, including the pharmaceutical companies and any researcher or investigator, to be able to look at identification and explore data sets in a public-facing interface. So we don't want to enroll a bunch of data and keep it hidden. We want to make it available to the world to be able to look at incidence of lung and liver disease progression, to know if you can enroll a particular clinical trial that have unique clinical features. And so this is our model. We're in the middle of this build, and it will be coming out in the next year. Importantly, the fields that we collect, the data that's collected here, we've actually gone around the world and taken in all the fields that are in the AIR registry. In addition, a bunch of the fields that are incorporated in our childhood liver studies in the United States, because we really do think that, like many other rare diseases, this could be a worldwide registry, and how that will fall out over the next few years is an important development for all of us. So we do have challenges. I think Rob mentioned some of these. This whole process of getting consent to get in a registry is still in development. There are large National Institute of Health grants being done in the United States trying to build what's called a federated consent process where consent at one site also equals consent at other sites. We also don't want to leave behind the children or the liver disease patients in this, and yet these are unique sets of questions for each individual group. And then there are obviously international regulatory issues with protected health information where some countries don't let any protected health information across their borders very easily, and all of pharma knows how difficult that is. We do think that some of the infrastructure of registries is important. This is our newsletter that goes out twice a year. We think to keep the patients informed is a very important piece of keeping registries active and healthy. As going forward, our tenets are to make as much data public as possible and use political will to find ways to integrate as many of the data sources. We really want to be working internationally if we can to design these different protocols of how registries really should run, and importantly, empower the patient community who desire to facilitate this integration. Like all of these big endeavors, this is my MUSC staff through the years that have worked in our 14 years of the registry that we've been running. I have to hire lots of people because I don't pay them enough, and yet at the same time, these large number of individuals have helped tremendously, along with the national collaborators. So thank you very much for having me.